Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing The Soul Stealer, written by Graeme Masterton. Here's the cover. It's a horror novel. It's a folk horror novel, really, because many of the horror elements relate to first American themes. So we have some mysticism there, we have some first American stories about demons, about different spirits, about ghosts. So that plays a big part in this story. And it's the second novel by this author that I've read recently that involves first American mythology in the story. So I wonder if this author really includes that in much of his horror novels. I'm not sure. I haven't read a great deal from this author. I've read a few, but what I've read really involves that first American themes going on in the plot. The horror elements are really well done in this story. It also involves elements about exploitation of young people trying to get into show business, like in the movies. And I think that the author's trying to discuss maybe the Me Too movement or his feelings about how people exploit young people trying to get ahead in that industry. I understand that, but I think it's a bit heavy-handed in this book. I think it could have been toned down a bit. I think it's very graphic. And I get that sometimes an audience has to be shocked to feel something, to get a real impression of something. So maybe that's what the author's trying to do. I think Graeme Masterton could have toned it down a little bit and would have had the same impact on the reader. That's my impression anyway. So we have a fair bit going on in this book. A lot of characters and a lot of different plots in the book intertwining and then merging into one at the very end. One of the plots centers around a lady called Susanna. Now she's a waitress and she wants to break into the movies and she's just waiting for a big chance. While she's working at the restaurant, there are two guys there and they invite her saying that there's going to be a big producer having a meeting and they want her to attend. She thinks it's a big chance. She thinks that she's going to get a shot in a movie. She's all for it, but her boyfriend's not. But her boyfriend's not a nice guy. He's quite violent and she just wants to get away from him as well. So she sees this as her big opportunity to make something for herself, but also get away from her boyfriend. Is it going to be what she expects? As a reader, we get a feeling that maybe there's warning signs there. Maybe Susanna shouldn't go to this meeting, but she decides to. And when she gets to the house, she realizes it's not what she'd hoped. And there are other things at play here. And she's in for a big shock, actually. And this is where we get some really graphic scenes in this book about her being exploited and mistreated by certain people in this big house. In this very heavily guarded mansion. So it's very guarded, very high walls, big fences, big gates. And she's kind of trapped. She's a prisoner in this house. She's got no way out. She didn't realize that at the start, but she's been duped into this situation. And we, as a reader, just get to witness what happens to her. And I think it could have been toned down a bit. It's quite graphic. It's quite horrific, really, what happens to her. Quite shocking. But I kind of get the reason why it's done like that. I just think it was a bit too much. Another part of this story involves Trinity Fox. Now, she gets a call from one of her friends, and she hasn't heard from this friend for about a year. This friend is in trouble, sounds very fearful, afraid for her life basically, and they agree to catch up that afternoon. When Trinity gets to this bar, where they agree to meet, her friend's not there, but she's told her friend's gone to the bathroom. So she goes into the bathroom just to shout out that she's here, and she sees her friend on fire, burning to death. She runs out, gets the authorities, the fire brigade, the police, and by the time they all get there, her friend's dead. She's sure that her friend's been murdered. The police deem it a suicide, but Trinity wants to know the truth. She's not sure that it was a suicide. There's a guy there at the time called Nemo. Trinity asks him for help. He used to be a police officer. He's not on the force now. And the reason he's not on the force is because he was a whistleblower. And he blew the whistle on some corrupt cops, and they tried to frame him. And so he's been kicked off the force. But he's a PI now, a private investigator, and he agrees to help Trinity, and together they start to investigate what happened to Trinity's friend. They think they're on the right path because soon enough, Nemo starts getting threats against him. Back off the case or something bad's going to happen. We're never sure what that something bad may be. Could it be somebody planning more evidence against Nemo, or somebody out to get him or his wife, or is someone in his family or friends? We're never sure, but there is an imminent danger if they do investigate this case, but they're not going to back off. So that's where this whole thread comes into play. They're trying to investigate what happened to Trinity's friend, while trying to outwit people who are trying to stop them, but also they're trying to keep their own family safe. That plays a big part in this whole story. I won't go into detail about what happens in the house, because that's where the whole horror element comes into it, and it was quite well done. The horror element was well done. The whole Jeffrey Epstein type thing going on in the house, that was a bit too much. Could have been there in a lesser degree, but I think it needed to be there to add impact to the story. But the horror element, that folklore horror element that had First American themes going through it, some First American mysticism and myths and legends involved in that part of the story, that was really well done and quite chilling and quite terrifying. The characters in this story, though, most of the characters are very weak. Only one character I think stood out as not being weak, and that was Nemo. The rest of the characters, including other main characters like Trinity, were quite weak, and that just gave me a bit of a negative view on this book overall. To have certain characters that are a big part in the story so weak and just not rounded at all. There seemed to be no care in how they were constructed, and even how they acted in the book, how they interacted with other things and other events in the story. Nemo, and his full name is Mino Frisbee. He is the only good character in the book, and what I mean by that, he's the only character that's fully well-rounded and constructed. And I'm going to say that he feels like a character that could have a series based on him. He just has that vibe. He's a very good character. I think his whole history is explained very well, in detail quite well, and it really feeds into what he's like in the present day timeline in the story, and it all made sense. It was very consistent, and all his motivations, all his actions do make sense. So I do like this character. I think he was well constructed, and just a pity that other characters in the book didn't have that much care taken into how they were created and constructed. The other character I want to talk about is Trinity Fox. She's not well constructed at all, and even in the book, her reactions in the book to certain events and to certain characters just don't make sense. I mean, there's a part in the book where she loses somebody very close to her, and it's almost like she stubbed her toe. That's the reaction we get in the book. It doesn't have a big reaction at all, and it seemed very strange to me. I don't know why she's written as someone who just feels like who's grey. There's no emotion there that I can really see coming out of the pages, and this character doesn't really bounce off the pages at all. And for a main character in a story, she really needed to have more life, really needed to come out of the pages more and engage the reader more, because for a main character to fail so largely in a story, that's a big negative impression for the reader. While I thought the folk horror element in this book was really well done, other elements in the story, not so much. The characters, just not well done at all. One character was really well done, Nemo, the rest not. So that had a big impact on me when I was reading this book. Also, just the writing style seemed a bit strange. I've read about 2 or 3 books from this author before this one, and those books just seemed more well written. So I'm not sure what was going on with this book, but the writing style, the way it was crafted, just didn't seem very polished, just didn't seem spot on for me. I rate this a 3 out of 5, and the 3 out of 5 is mainly for that folk horror element that was really strong, and I really did enjoy that. And I'm glad that this author includes First American mythology into his horror stories. Just adds another few layers in the story that you don't really see in some other horror stories going on. On my channel, I do review quite a few horror books. If you don't want to miss out on those videos, check out my channel and subscribe. There's also a horror playlist on my channel. It should be on your screen now.